Taste, The Delicious Story of Julia Child and Her Cat by Susanna Reich, illustrated by Amy Bates. Minette Mimosa McWilliams Child was a very lucky cat, perhaps the luckiest cat in all of Paris. Day and night she could hear the bells of Sainte Clotilde tolling the hour, and day and night she could smell the delicious smells of mayonnaise, hollandaise, cassoulet, cheese soufflés, and duck pâtés, wafting from the pots and pans of her owner, Julia Child. But life had not always been like this for Minette. Oh no, not at all. Several years earlier, Julia Child had moved to Paris with her husband, Paul. They had no children, nor did they have any pets, but they had each other. Every weekend, arm in arm, they wandered down the cobblestone streets, poking into little shops and peeking into hidden courtyards. And every time they went out for a walk, they enjoyed a fine, fine meal. They nibbled croissants in cafes where cats curled up on chairs. They munched on baguettes in bistros where birds warbled in cages. They dined on rolls in restaurants where little white poodles nestled at ladies' feet. "You are the butter to my bread," Paul told Julia. Julia and Paul's apartment was dark and so cold in the winter that they had to wear coats in the living room. There were birds on the windowsill and mice in the walls. The kitchen was up a narrow flight of stairs, and there was no refrigerator, only an icebox. But this was home, and Julia and Paul warmed it with family and friends. There was only one thing missing. Une maison sans chat, c'est la vie sans soleil. A house without a cat is like life without sunshine. And so Julia and Paul adopted Minette, a mischievous, energetic pussycat with a lovely speckled coat. Or shall we say, Minette adopted Julia and Paul. Julia and Paul were charmed by Minette's delicate whiskers, her superior nose, and her quick little paws. Here was a cat who thoroughly enjoyed life's many pleasures: long naps, soft laps, and of course, lunch. But for Minette, no ordinary meal would do. Like any self-respecting French cat, Minette wouldn't dream of eating food out of a can. What a thrill to pounce on an unsuspecting bird! How delightful the crunch of fresh-caught mouse devoured on the living room rug. Julia spent mornings at the marketplace, buying meat from le boucher, bread from le boulanger, milk and cheese from la crémière, and cake from le pâtissier. Afterward, she'd make a splendid lunch for herself and Paul and offer Minette the leftovers. Minette might even take a nibble, but of course mouse and bird were much preferred. Sometimes, the nice old fish lady at the marketplace gave Julia luscious fish heads for Minette. Julia would cook them up in a pot. Perhaps she'd add a dollop of scrumptious chicken liver custard. Minette might even take a nibble, but it seemed that mouse and bird were really much preferred. Julia was determined to improve her cooking, so she went to the marketplace for advice. At the vegetable stand, an old lady showed her how to tell a good potato from a bad one. At the supply store, Julia bought enough knives to fill a pirate ship. She carted home a giant cookbook, and she even learned how to stir 2 pots at the same time. Minette was not impressed. And so Julia signed up for classes at Le Cordon Bleu, the famous cooking school. When Chef Bunyar, the teacher, taught her to slice and dice, mince and chop, she paid close attention. I had never taken anything so seriously, she later wrote, husband and cat accepted. At home, Minette took her job seriously too. She perfected her hunting skills by chasing a Brussels sprout tied to a string. As the months passed, Julia became quite the gourmet cook. She baked and blanched, blended and boiled, drained and dried, dusted and fried. She floured and flipped, pitted and plucked, rinsed and roasted, sizzled and skimmed. And when she wasn't trimming, toasting, or topping, she was washing, whipping, and whisking. At Julia's feet, Minette purred with contentment. The smells were heavenly, the tastes delightful. Still, there was Mouse. One chilly fall morning, Julia decided to test a new recipe. Perhaps it would be even better than Mouse. She went to the marketplace and bought a special cut of meat. She rubbed it with salt and pepper and showered it with herbs and spices. Then she placed it on the windowsill and waited for the flavors to develop. For 3 days. Minette waited too. Finally, the meat was ready to cook. Julia eased it into a pan, tucked some vegetables around it, and popped the pan into the oven. The meat bubbled and spat. When it was done, Julia proudly carried the platter to the table. "Ooh la la, magnifique!" For 3 days, Julia and Paul feasted on the leftovers while Minette waited for a nibble. When Julia finally laid the platter on the floor, bits of meat still clung to the bone. "Would you like to try this, pussycat?" said Julia. Minette crept up to the platter. She sniffed, she twitched, and then she pounced. "Ooh la la, magnifique!" Minette attacked that bone, gnawing it and chewing it and rolling it around on the floor. She frisked and flounced, darted and batted. She tiptoed and hopped, danced and pranced. She jumped and rolled, curled and stretched, raced and ran, gurgled and purred. And then she licked herself all over and took a nice long nap. Minette Mimosa McWilliams' child was a very lucky cat, perhaps the luckiest cat in all of Paris. She lived upstairs in an old gray house 1 block from the River Seine. Day and night she could hear the bells of Sainte Clotilde tolling the hour. And day and night she could smell the delicious smells of mayonnaise, hollandaise, cassoulet, cheese soufflé, and duck pâté wafting from the pots and pans of her owner, Julia Child. Bon appétit, Minette! Still, there would always be Mouse.
Hey guys, welcome to my Epic Motherhood. Thank you so much for joining us in our reading of Minette's Feast. I hope you love this book as much as I do. I love Julia Child. She had a really amazing cooking show on TV for a very long time, and she said the funniest things and made the most amazing food. Here at the back of the book, you can see a real picture of Julia Child, and it says here that many of the quotes in this book were taken from real letters that Julia Child wrote, and it also says that she was 6 feet 2 inches tall. Isn't that amazing? Julia went to Paris and fell in love with the food there, and then wrote an amazing cookbook so the English-speaking world could enjoy French cooking as well. I hope you enjoyed this book. We'll see you again soon. Bye!
Bye!